Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alan Wilson. Very brief introduction. I'm a technology advisor with Invest in Northern Ireland, and I've set up over 35 ICT companies in Northern Ireland in the last 10 years. Prior to that, I was with Shorts Missile Systems, electronics engineer, Caterpillar. I ran their global logistics, KPMG Consulting, and then SAP. Both. I was head of supply chain software for both those companies. So that's a quick one on me. We're going to try and keep this kind of fast and sharp, and if I wince anytime it's because I've got toothache, lots of sympathy around the room, that would be great. But let's try and keep it really short and sharp leading up to lunchtime. So enough on me. So the topic is really, how can SMEs get into this market? What can we get? But before I ask the companies to introduce themselves, I'd like a quick show of hands around the room. So first of all the other private sector company people in the room, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. And people involved in academia, research groups, could you raise your hand, please? Okay, thank you. So I know what all the rest are, my bedfellows, so thank you. Just give us a feel for the audience. So maybe just start off, we're going to try and be fairly sharp. I've asked all the panelists to try and stick to a 1 minute elevator pitch. So we'll start with Gavin Duffy at the far side, please. Need a mic? See a microphone?
Hi, Gavin Duffy from RealSim. We are a 3D simulation company that specialises in combining 3D survey data with game engine technology to create interactive simulations, environment simulations. Specifically, our main breadwinner is in planning, mainly on dry land at the moment, but we have been involved in this cluster on the marine space for a couple of years. And we will be honest in saying that we haven't yet. So we say got a clear product line, and again that's one of the challenges, and I guess one of the topics for discussion that we'd like to flesh out. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Clodagh McGrath. I'm the environmental manager with DP Energy. We're a small and medium enterprise renewable energy developer. We're technology neutral. We have the 100 megawatt Fairhead tidal site next to Sue's TVL site. We also have a 30 megawatt site off the coast of Scotland, which we have recently submitted for consent. As an SME ourselves, we're collaborating. We've received FP7 funding. We're collaborating with University of Edinburgh, University of Chalmers, HMRC and SAMS in Scotland. And we're also collaborating with CASE, AFP, University of Ulster. We also have a SFI placement starting next week in our organisation. The reason why we're very keen on collaborating is that we're a very hands-on partner, because we're not a big utility. We can't finance our projects through balance sheets. So when we're going to our debt financing, we have to be convinced of our due diligence. So we are hands-on because we have to convince ourselves, to convince our potential financiers that we have a robust baseline, that we have a robust environmental impact assessment, and that what we put in the water is going to generate electricity. Thank you.
My name's Brendan Hyland. I am the founder and chairman of a technology company called WFS Technologies. We design and build underwater wireless instrumentation and control systems. The company's head office in just outside Edinburgh in Scotland, and we have a systems integration centre here in Belfast. The company was set up around about 10 years ago. We initially focused on developing underwater wireless systems, primarily targeted the defence markets, both UK and US markets. But the company's migrated from defence towards environmental, and most recently we focus almost primarily today on the oil and gas markets of the North Sea, Gulf of Mexico and Australia. And we have some of our equipment in the demonstration area, or the exhibition centre just outside.
Afternoon, my name is John Breslin. I represent SmartBay Ireland, which is a not-for-profit organisation. We've been set up a year ago, and we're very much we're managing a test, demonstration and validation facility. It's new infrastructure. We're trying to identify opportunities and work with SMEs, multinationals who want to use this infrastructure. And it's been interesting working with SMEs. One thing I realise is, and to try and maybe stimulate discussion here, is that time is a very important thing for SMEs. So trying to give them assistance with preparing funding proposals. Funding is another issue. You have to sort of stimulate innovation by providing access to funding. We've got a National Infrastructure Access Grant that DCU are providing, and that is already stimulating new innovative developments using our infrastructure. And I think we need to think clearly about, going forward. There's lots of good ideas, everybody's interested in collaboration, but it does need funding and it needs people to drive it, and it needs direct action, and we need to think about that. Identify who the players are. Mike mentioned about the database, who's there, what they're interested in collaborating on, what their skills are, and how we can facilitate that. Thank you.
Thank you, panel. We'll go straight into questions, and any time, if anyone's got a question, just raise your hand, try and get our attention. And I want this to be as interactive as possible, please, so don't leave your questions to the end. If someone's annoying you, get your hand up, or even shout out. So I want it to be very interactive, please, if you can. So I'm going to kick off the questions. So my first one was, with the good news about the Galway Declaration recently, and so my question, bearing in mind these are SME companies in the large, is how will you take advantage of having Ireland at the centre of the Canada, the US, the EU are all around us. We're at the centre of this here with the Galway Declaration. So how do you feel you will take advantage of that? And I'll start off with John here, since he's based in Galway.
Yes, I think there's definite opportunities. It's trying to, I suppose we've had discussions with Karen Skinner about this. We need to look at areas of sort of complementary activities. We're trying to focus maybe on the aquaculture industry. But I think what we need to do is engage with industry players in Ireland and do the same with our counterparts in Newfoundland, and try and see where we can look at developing ICT products and services within those industry sectors. And I think key to that is then us engaging with the Irish community as well to see who can play a role in that. But I think we need to take an initiative now. There's an opportunity there. The call that is going to come out is looking for something large on observatory systems. The political agenda is set in terms of collaboration between the various countries, and now it's coming up with those ideas and trying to run with them and trying to get a proposal together. And I suppose even at a very practical level, we want to get a memorandum of understanding, a kind of a working MOU in place at a technical level with Newfoundland, the SmartBay in Newfoundland. And again, a lot of this is through collaboration, relationship building. The ideas will come, and we're very keen to talk to people about any ideas they might have in that regard.
Thanks, John. Okay, any comments already? Yeah.
Thanks. I should have mentioned at the end of my presentation that the National Maritime College of Ireland actually signed an MOU with VMT, which was the company Karen mentioned, just a fortnight ago. What we're doing with them is we're basically going to assist them in the development of their next generation of small survival craft simulators, which is what their business is. The challenge we face both in that space and also in building research collaborations across the Atlantic is, of course, the old chestnut of funding. And I'd just like to throw out there to people, something that I think we need to work very hard at is to try and find those transatlantic funding mechanisms. To work very hard at that next step, because clearly the willingness is there on both sides of the Atlantic, whether it's Canada or the United States. But the missing link is the oil in the engine. It's the money, and it doesn't necessarily need massive amounts of money to get it started, but it needs enough money because, let's face it, SMEs cannot get involved, free gratis and for nothing. They just don't have that flexibility. So there needs to be some oil in the machine to enable that. The willingness is clearly there on both sides.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I've got a response from Clodagh here. I'll just get the microphone.
Sorry, I'd just like to add to that as a tidal renewable energy developer, it's a global market out there. We have sites in Northern Ireland, in the UK, and looking at potentially more sites in the UK. But we've also, we're in Australia, and we're looking at Canada as well, so sites, so that there's the innovative elements, the application for these are worldwide. And I think that needs to be borne in mind, that there's a huge market out there.
Yeah, but I very much welcome the Galway Agreement, and before the official Galway Agreement, we had already had a meeting with a Canadian company, which wasn't made through any official route, and it was raised, as Mike said, that the issue of the lack of us not knowing who is out there. So hopefully that will point be taken across to any transatlantic collaboration, that there's a database that we actually see well who is on the other side, and for them to be able to look at a similar database and find who we are, so that we can bring together the two sides for the first time in 200 million years, yeah, and just on a general point, the funding, there's a lot of funding out there. We're talking about Horizon 2020 come around the corner, funding for academia, and I'd also like to make the point that R&D doesn't just come from academia. In fact, many of the SMEs in this room come from academia. They're people with research skills and know-how with a commercial focus. And that shouldn't be lost. In fact, we're actually involved in two projects, two different universities, and we're actually bringing the IP. So we're saying we're giving you our IP, you develop it, bring it forward. So just to be cognizant of that.
Okay, thanks very much, Gavin. Maybe move it on a bit, if that's okay, to the next question. A wee bit edgy, this one, so any academics in the room, feel free to cover your ears. So, SME, the point just made was about SMEs have ex-researchers, people with good degrees, smart guys working for them. And they do work, of course, with research institutes and universities to try and get their IP taken on to the next stage. And one of the challenges there is that an SME typically is looking at a much shorter life cycle for their IP. So they want something in 3 to 18 months. That's kind of when they want it. They need to get this thing commercialized. They want it out the gate. They need to get money in, or otherwise their business is over. And university typically, don't get me wrong, but PhD program's a 3-year program. There's a start, there's a middle, and an end to it. And that can be challenging in my experience working with SMEs over the years. So I would just maybe like to hand over to Brendan and ask him to give us his thoughts on how best to work between an SME and a research institute, how both can get good value from that. Thanks.
Thank you. Effective cooperation between an SME and an academic institution is very challenging indeed. And one of the major risks faced by SMEs is finding the centre of gravity of the culture being a research culture as opposed to a commercial culture. And to that end, I would encourage owners of SMEs to be very cautious on the level of core low TRL research that's brought into a business. I mean, I would encourage as a percentage of the business, no more than 10 to 20% of the business by culture is orientated towards relatively low TRL research. I mean, certainly from experience, the scale of investment needed to take university and research centre technology through to market is quite substantial. So, for example, my last company, which was an optoelectronics, we spanned technology out of 2 universities, Glasgow and Southampton, and also a research centre at BT, and it took 1,000 man years to take that technology through to market, and over $160 million of VC funding. Our current business, which is going for 10 years, has been bootstrapped itself through. It's our technology, low-frequency radio for communications underwater. We've developed the technology. We've got an IP portfolio of about 300 patent applications, 75 granted. And it's taken 200 to 300 man years to take that technology through from core development through to real products going into the field in a range of markets. The risk, circling back, the risk I see from an academic perspective, once a PhD is finished or a postdoc is finished, there's a perception there's only one small leap to take that through to market. Actually, that at best is 5 or 10% of the railroad to turn something that's on paper interesting technology into truly viable business.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Does anyone else like to make a comment there?
Yeah, so I just add to that, if I may. I suppose in our experience of working and collaborating with academic partners, it's critical for us to have a very defined scope and methods as to what our deliverables are going to be for DP Energy, because sometimes our deliverables are very different to what the academic institutions are, and we're also, I suppose, mindful that innovation, normally happens when you're least expecting it. So you have to allow that in research and allow that flexibility to innovate, so that they can apply these potentially fantastic new technologies to future tidal development sites.
Any points from the audience there? Yes, okay. Microphone coming up.
Thank you. Just want to add a note there on what you've just said. When you take a centre such as Beaufort Research, where we've 90 in-house researchers, but they're contract researchers, that actually changes the dynamic and the nature of the beast and the way and the pace at which we work. So I think that's important to take that on board as well, because we've got our researchers that are basically working from one contract to another, so there's very much an industry feel when you come through the doors of Beaufort Research, traditionally HMRC, which means that they've got that industry approach about them, which I think is very welcomed by the industry partners. I'm sure DP Energy as well would have noted that. So just not all of the academic institutes would be, crawling along at a snail's pace, far from it. And I think this seems to be very much the way it's going now for research in Ireland. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any others from the floor? Okay, we're kind of into the last. We have one more down at the back, please.
Yeah, my ears are burning. I've heard my name twice, so I better speak. Dominic McLaren. I have the Horizon 2020 Energy hat for Northern Ireland. And then there is an instrument for SMEs to go it alone under Horizon 2020. It's a 3-stage process. And first stage, 10-page submission for a research proposal. Second stage is something a little bit longer, maybe 20 pages, but up to £2 million or €2 million funding. And this idea of collaboration, SMEs as the core of Horizon 2020. Universities can't go it alone anymore. We have to, when I say we, I come from a research background, but universities have to work through the SME group, SME sector, through industry collaboration to take products to market. And that's the core message through Horizon 2020. So I'll be speaking this afternoon on one of the panels, so if you want to talk to me, I can tell you a little bit more about it.
Okay, thanks very much. This is a good point, and I think you'll be definitely getting follow-ups. Okay, I'll just move it on to my last question, and then I realise we're coming up against lunch, so we were cut from 20 minutes to 15. I think I'm just about right. So let me just get my glasses down here. So another interesting area for SMEs is north and south and across Europe, support interventions, government funding programs, training funding, research funding. We've heard about the Horizon 2020. So what would be, how could it work better for you from an SME perspective? And I totally get, I work with SAP Research, I work with Intel Research. They've got huge, big entities, and their whole job is managing the research agenda and stuff. But an SME, it's a different game. So from an SME's perspective, could you maybe take it on for us and start off over here with Gavin?
The SME perspective and sorry, can you clarify the question a little bit for me? Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're an Enterprise Ireland client, and if you look at the Enterprise Ireland website, there's a massive plethora of funding under various different streams. And for North-South, you've got Intertrade Ireland, There's routes to basically take on subvented salespersons. I have to say we have had some Enterprise Ireland funding. It was match funding, and but there's nothing out there in terms of you've got to invest your own cash at some stage. So it is difficult. There's always an investment. One of the few things, so we say, are innovation vouchers, but again, it's not it's paid to academia, and we've used that successfully. Some of the structures that have been mentioned for Horizon 2020 do sound encouraging, but it's still challenging for SMEs. You still need to be able to front up cash in kind at some stage of the process, and well, I think we prefer obviously just to maybe have a level playing field with academia in that front, where that's not the case. I say that is a bee in my bonnet anyway, for sure.
I think critical to it all really is communication and developing networks. We started working with AFB as part of our programme in Fairhead, and the working relationship has developed and it's ongoing. We've got projects with TVL, joint projects with them, and it's all about developing trust. The picture that Sam put up earlier is spot on, really, the crocodile and the bird. You know, you have to develop trust, and then once you have that, hopefully develop some smart conferencing facilities where you don't have to see the person face to face. You can actually communicate over the phone or via email largely, so you're actually cutting down on travel time as well. And having these networks, having these clusters, but having actions resulting from them, so that they're not just talking shops, that there's actions, there's something tangible, there's products, there's innovation that can come out of these is critical to it all.
So we've carried out R&D programs with a range of different institutions, from universities, research centres, through to end users over the years. And we found by far the most effective programs are typically those that directly involved end users. And typically we're operating at a relatively high TRL level, TRL 4, 5, 6 or above, seeking to put equipment in the field to target a particular application. One of the challenges, of course, is the government funding structures try to, or predicate towards higher grant rates towards low TRL research, which I actually think often steers businesses to take on the wrong level of development activity. And I would strongly encourage government sector organisations to reconsider and incentivise small companies to engage much more closely to the end use, because that's really what will ultimately generate success and wealth.
I suppose just 2 points. One is, I think, in terms of, say, looking towards Horizon 2020 funding. I mean, one of the big challenges then is the time that goes into preparing the funding application, and then the success rate. An SME gets involved in that, a small company, and prepares a proposal, puts in all of those efforts, and then is unsuccessful. And the success rate is quite low. And I suppose the European Commission's view of an SME and some of our views on an SME might be slightly different. In a lot of cases, particularly in this sort of emerging ICT sector, you know, these are micro SMEs, and I'm just wondering in Horizon 2020 how well they will compete against the larger SMEs. I think as well, if we're serious about trying to create this new sector and really pushing ICT and the marine, maybe from a government perspective, we need to look at some specific supports for that. You look at the National Digital Research Centre in Dublin and the work they're doing in trying to incubate small companies and get them started up and get them through a mentoring process, and maybe that's a model we could look at for marine ICT.
Okay, I'll just conclude there with my Invest in I hat on that we do have a product called Grant for R&D, and Grant for R&D starts from very near market to out to sort of 3-year timeline, and we do vary the amount of grant depending on the challenge that's in the project. But there's something there for most people seriously engaged in innovation, R&D. We do have a product to cover that. So if you're speaking to me later, or any of my colleagues, do ask questions. I'd just like to thank the panel very much for their contribution today, and I'd like you all to thank them in the usual manner, please.